Professor Muller, why have Jews been extraordinarily successful in capitalism?
Well, I should say that they haven't always been, but on average, as I say, when they lived in societies that gave them a modicum of equality of legal opportunity, that is, that didn't legally discriminate against their entry into various aspects of capitalist life, they have tended to do disproportionately well over time. The reason, especially in the Western world, but not just in the Western world. Part of that is because of deep historical factors. For a variety of reasons, Jews in medieval Europe and in early modern Europe tended to be disproportionately involved in commercial sorts of activities, even when commerce was a sort of island within a larger non-commercial sea. They tended to be involved especially as merchants. A small number, but a salient number of them were involved in various forms of lending money and then eventually various forms of finance. So one reason is because they came to modern European societies and to American society with a much greater immersion in commercial culture than people who came from, say, more peasant backgrounds. That's one factor. Secondly, among Jews, you tended to have very high levels of male literacy in societies in which most people were still illiterate. And you tended to have a high respect for the written word and for systematic learning. That came ultimately from Talmudic or rabbinic culture, which Jews were expected to try to achieve some mastery of, though only a small percentage were in a position to do so. But as I say, in societies where most people were illiterate, among Jews you tended to have high levels of literacy, especially among men. And literacy tends to be a prerequisite, really, for engaging in sophisticated kinds of commerce. So that was a factor as well. And then you had the fact that Jews, because Jews had tended to be discriminated against and excluded from many other areas of economic life. I mean, for most of the Middle Ages and much of early modern Europe, they couldn't, for example, own land. There were some small exceptions, but by and large they couldn't. And by and large they were excluded from craft guilds. So while there were Jewish artisans, there wasn't a high percentage of the Jewish population. And then when they came into Central European societies and Western European societies and American societies, where eventually the legal barriers against them declined, there was still the factor of social discrimination, keeping them out of many established areas of the economy, and that led them to look for new economic opportunities. So Jews tended to be often innovators in terms of marketing and so on. And then, if you add to all those factors, the fact that Jews tended to have more international connections than most people. This was especially important in the early modern world, where, for example, in the Spanish and Portuguese empires and in the Dutch empires, you had groups of Jews, some of whom had been forced to convert to Christianity in the Iberian Peninsula, and then settled in various parts of the Iberian coast, the Brazilian coast, parts of the Caribbean, Savannah in the United States, Savannah or Charleston in the United States, Amsterdam and Antwerp, London, and that formed a source of international contacts that at some points was important in Jewish history. And even as late as the turn of the 20th century, you had a very interesting circuit of an international circuit of Jews, mostly of Lithuanian origin, who had come from Lithuania to South Africa. Some of them had settled in Paris and London, and they became a circuit for the sale of ostrich plumes, which were very important in fashion at the time. So if you take all those other factors, plus the international connections, and you put them all together, that tends to explain, insofar as we can, disproportionate Jewish success.